Zixthan's crystalline appendages trembled as it watched the young human practice in the combat chamber. The being it had raised from infancy moved with a fluid grace that defied the awkward, stumbling creature it had once been. Marcus, the A, name had been chosen from the human databases they'd salvaged, executed a perfect spiral kick that would have shattered Zixthan's exoskeleton. 23 cycles had passed since the hegemony fleet had glassed Earth. Zixthan remembered the emergency transmission that had reached their exploration vessel. All human colonies eliminated. Species designated extinct. Proceed with mining operations. But Zixthan had found the pod. Hidden in the debris field of a destroyed transport, a single human infant had survived in a makeshift life support system. The child couldn't have been more than 2 Earth years old, crying and reaching through the transparent barrier with tiny fingers. Every protocol demanded Zixthan report the discovery and terminate the last remnant of the dangerous species. Instead, Zixthan had lied in its reports and brought the child aboard. The early years had been challenging. Human physiology was remarkably adaptable, but their emotional needs were complex. Zixthan had studied every piece of human literature and scientific data it could access, trying to understand how to nurture the strange little being. The child learned the hegemony's common tongue within cycles, displaying an intelligence that far exceeded their projections. Marcus had grown into something extraordinary. Standing nearly 2 meters tall, his frame carried muscle density that shouldn't have been possible given the ship's artificial gravity. His mind absorbed information at rates that made Zixthan's people seem sluggish. Most unsettling were his eyes, bright blue orbs that seemed to calculate everything around him with predatory precision. Zix, Marcus called out, using the shortened name he'd adopted as a hatchling. Want to spar? The casual offer sent chills through Zixthan's nervous system. Last time they had sparred, Marcus had held back significantly and still nearly crushed Zixthan's primary limb. The human's strength wasn't just physical, his tactical thinking had evolved beyond anything in the databases. Perhaps later, Zixthan replied, its voice box producing the harmonious tones their species used for nervous deflection. Marcus smiled, and that expression had become increasingly difficult to interpret. Was it affection? Amusement? Something darker? 3 cycles ago, they had encountered pirates attacking a civilian convoy. Zixthan had planned to avoid involvement, but Marcus had volunteered to help. What followed still haunted Zixthan's dreams. The young human had single-handedly disabled 6 armed raiders, moving through their ship like a force of nature. He'd shown mercy to those who surrendered. But the efficiency of his violence had been terrifying. Afterward, Marcus had been cheerful, asking Zixthan about dinner plans, as if he hadn't just demonstrated why the hegemony had feared his species enough to commit genocide. I've been thinking, Marcus said, settling into the meditation position Zixthan had taught him. About Earth, about my people. Zixthan's internal temperature dropped several degrees. This was the conversation it had been dreading. The historical records don't match your stories, Marcus continued, his tone conversational but his eyes sharp. The official hegemony reports describe humans as uncontrollably aggressive and expansion-obsessed. But the cultural artifacts I've studied show a species capable of incredible beauty, compassion, and cooperation. History is often complicated. Zixthan managed. Yes, it is. Marcus stood, his movements carrying the coiled tension of a predator. I've accessed some restricted files. Did you know that humans had achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years before the hegemony made contact? They were barely beginning to expand beyond their system. Zixthon said nothing. The initial diplomatic exchanges went well. Humans were eager to learn, to trade, to join the galactic community. Marcus's voice remained steady, but something cold had crept into his expression. Right up until they discovered the hegemony's treatment of the Kethmori colonies. The Kethmori. Zixthon had hoped Marcus would never learn about them. Humans demanded the hegemony stop enslaving the Kethmori. When the council refused, humans began helping colonies escape. They called it a moral imperative. Marcus laughed, but the sound held no warmth. The hegemony decided a species willing to fight for strangers' freedom was too dangerous to exist. Marcus, you saved me. The human's voice softened, and for a moment he looked like the curious child Zixthon remembered. You raised me, taught me, loved me, I know that. But you also helped cover up the genocide of my entire species. The truth hung between them like a gravity well, warping everything around it. I was following orders, Zixthon whispered. I know. Marcus moved closer, and Zixthon fought the urge to retreat. And now I'm going to follow my nature. What does that mean? Marcus smiled again, and this time Zixthon recognized the expression. It was the same look he'd worn before dismantling those pirates, calm, focused, and absolutely certain. It means, I'm going to find the surviving Kethmori colonies. It means I'm going to gather every species the hegemony has oppressed. And it means I'm going to teach them what humans learned long ago, that freedom is worth fighting for. Zixthon stared at the being it had raised, seeing clearly for the first time what it had created. Marcus wasn't just physically powerful or intellectually gifted. He carried within him the essential human trait that had doomed his species, the absolute inability to accept injustice, even when fighting it meant facing impossible odds. You'll die, Zixthon said. The hegemony controls thousands of systems. Probably, Marcus agreed. But you taught me something else, Zix. You taught me that one person can make a difference. You saved me when you could have followed orders. Now I have to save others. As Marcus walked away to prepare for whatever crusade he was planning, Zixthon finally understood why the hegemony had feared humanity enough to destroy them. They hadn't eliminated a species, they had created a legend. And legends, as Zixthon was beginning to realize, were far more dangerous than any army.